Imagine walking through a forest so dark. The trees themselves seem to whisper your name. What if the forest had eyes, and it was watching you? The wind, carrying voices of those lost to the woods, chills you to the bone. Tonight, follow a young girl named Lily as she ventures into the forest, unaware that some legends aren't just stories, they're warnings. The forest is alive, and it has a secret, one that might be her undoing. In the small, quiet village of Black Hollow, there was a forest that no one dared enter after dusk. The locals spoke of it in hushed tones, whispers of strange happenings and disappearances. For generations, the forest had claimed the lives of those brave enough to wander its cursed paths, and every time someone ventured too far, they would hear eerie whispers, calling them deeper into the woods. Lily, a curious young girl with an adventurous spirit, had heard the stories all her life, but she never believed them. One evening, as the mist rose from the ground like fingers reaching out for the sky, Lily decided to prove to herself that the stories were just that, stories. She stepped into the forest as the sun dipped below the horizon. Almost instantly, the air grew colder, and the trees seemed to close in around her. The once peaceful forest now felt suffocating, like something was watching from the darkness. As she walked deeper, the whispers started, soft at first, like the wind, but then louder, unmistakable voices calling her name. "Come closer, Lily." Shivers ran down her spine as the voices grew clearer, almost desperate, but she continued on, her curiosity pushing her forward. Then, through the mist, she saw it, the massive oak tree at the heart of the forest. Its twisted branches seemed to reach out like gnarled fingers, and its bark was covered in strange symbols. As Lily approached the tree, a cold gust of wind swept through the clearing, carrying with it a bone-chilling whisper. "You shouldn't have come." She reached out to touch the tree, and the moment her fingers brushed against the rough bark, a terrible force surged through her body. The ground beneath her feet cracked open, and she fell into a dark, twisting underground passage. The deeper Lily went, the more the air smelled of decay. Her footsteps echoed, and every shadow seemed to move, as though something unseen followed her. The whispers surrounded her now, speaking in frantic tones. Leave, or die like the others. Lily felt a presence closing in around her, the dark energy of the forest reaching for her. She finally stumbled upon an ancient stone altar, covered in bloodstains. At its center was the heart of the oak, an ominous, glowing crystal that pulsed with dark magic. The whispers grew louder, and Lily realized the horrible truth. The forest was alive, and it had been waiting for her, just like it had waited for all the others. She was meant to become part of the forest's dark legacy. The heart of the oak would seal her fate forever, binding her soul to the forest's cursed existence. Will Lily escape the forest, or will she join the countless others who vanished into its dark depths? Now moving to the second shocking scary story. What if time itself could trap you, pulling you through the centuries into nightmares you can't escape? Imagine finding a glowing crystal that opens a doorway to a twisted version of history, where nothing is as it seems. Tonight, join Max and Emily as they uncover the truth behind a cursed crystal cavern, where every time they step through, they risk not just their lives, but their very souls. Max and Emily had always been close, sharing an adventurous spirit, but nothing could have prepared them for what they found in their grandmother's attic. Hidden behind stacks of old furniture was a dusty chest, sealed with strange markings. Inside, they discovered a glowing crystal pendant, its light pulsing like a heartbeat. Curiosity led them to touch it, and as soon as their fingers brushed the surface, the world around them shattered. A blinding light consumed them, and when it finally faded, they were standing in the mouth of a dark, ominous cavern. The walls of the cavern sparkled with thousands of strange crystals, but the deeper they ventured, the more they felt the weight of something ancient and evil watching them. Suddenly, the pendant in Emily's hand grew cold, and the air grew thick with an unnatural chill. A voice echoed through the cavern, low and distorted. "You should not have come." Max and Emily looked around in confusion, but there was no sign of anyone. The crystals began to hum, their eerie glow illuminating the cavern in ghostly hues. As they ventured deeper, they stumbled upon a stone door, etched with strange symbols. It opened without a sound, revealing a dark passage leading to another time. But something was wrong. As they stepped through, they found themselves in a forgotten town, its buildings rotting and empty. The streets were shrouded in fog, and the only sounds were the whispers of something lurking in the darkness. Max and Emily quickly realized that the crystal didn't just take them to different places. It took them to places twisted by darkness, each one more distorted than the last. In one era, they found themselves in an abandoned asylum, where the souls of the lost still roamed, trapped by their own insanity. In another, they were surrounded by a crumbling kingdom, where the king had made a deal with something ancient and horrifying, and now the land was cursed to decay forever. The deeper they traveled through time, the more they began to hear voices, disembodied whispers calling them to stay, to never leave. It was as if the crystal had become their prison, trapping them in a never-ending loop of haunted timelines. But the true horror came when they uncovered the cavern's darkest secret. The crystals were not just gateways to time, but were cursed remnants of souls lost to the void. Every time they used the crystal, they risked their very essence being absorbed into the cavern, becoming part of its twisted, eternal nightmare. Now, Max and Emily had to find a way to escape before the crystal consumed them, or worse, trapped them in a nightmare they could never wake from. Would they escape the haunted cavern, or would they become part of its cursed timeline forever? Moving to their story. Imagine moving into a house that's been abandoned for years, only to discover that the walls hold the memories of those who lived and died within. What if the house's past refuses to stay buried, and every night you hear the echoes of the forgotten souls who still walk its halls? Tonight, join Sarah and her brother as they uncover the terrifying truth behind the house on Maple Hill, a mansion that's alive with the horrors of its past, waiting for the next victim. Sarah had always dreamed of living in a grand old house, so when her family moved into the eerie mansion on Maple Hill, she was excited. The house had been empty for years, its windows dark and its paint peeling, but her parents insisted it was a great opportunity. What they didn't know was that this house wasn't just old. It was cursed. The moment Sarah and her younger brother, Tim, stepped through the front door, they felt it. A strange heaviness in the air, as if the house was watching them. The floors creaked under their feet, and every room felt too still, too silent. It was as if the house had been waiting for them. As the days passed, Sarah started noticing strange things. Doors that had been locked when they went to bed would be wide open in the morning. The air grew colder in certain rooms, and at night, she heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, as though someone was walking just behind her. She turned, but there was no one there. One evening, as a storm raged outside, Sarah decided to explore the attic, hoping to find some old family relics that might explain the house's strange atmosphere. As she reached the top of the stairs, the door to the attic creaked open by itself, as if inviting her inside. Tim was hesitant, but Sarah pushed the door open. The room was dark, filled with old trunks and cobwebs, but what caught her eye was a large, dusty mirror leaning against the far wall. When she approached it, the reflection in the glass seemed wrong. At first, it was just her, standing in the attic, but then, behind her, she saw a shadow flicker. She spun around, heart racing, but the room was empty. The shadow in the mirror, however, remained. That night, Sarah heard whispers from the walls. It was faint at first, like a distant conversation, but as she lay in bed, it grew louder, voices calling her name, begging for her to listen. "Help us, Sarah." The next day, she researched the history of the house and discovered its horrifying past. The mansion had once been home to the Hawthorne family, wealthy and influential, until tragedy struck. A series of untimely deaths plagued the family. Suicides, disappearances, and rumors of dark rituals in the attic. It seemed that the Hawthornes had made a deal with something darker, and now their souls were trapped in the house, unable to move on. Sarah's heart sank as she realized that the house had never been abandoned. The spirits of the Hawthorne family were still there, lingering in the shadows, and they wanted something from her. Something she didn't understand. As night fell, Sarah and Tim heard the footsteps again. But this time they weren't alone. A cold, ghostly presence hovered over their beds, whispering their names. It's time. You have to join us. The walls seemed to close in on them, and as they rushed through the house, every door slammed shut in front of them. The house was alive, trapping them inside with the spirits of the Hawthorne family. The mirror in the attic had shown them the way into the past, but now, the past was bleeding into the present, and they were trapped in a never-ending nightmare. Would Sarah and Tim find a way to escape the house, or would they become the latest victims of its haunted legacy? Are you ready for the fourth story? What if there was a village so forgotten, so abandoned, that even time itself couldn't remember its name? A place where the shadows are alive, and the people who lived there still walk the streets, lost to the world. Tonight, join Alex and Rachel as they stumble upon a village no one has ever spoken of, and discover that some places should never be visited, for they carry the weight of a dark, unspeakable past. Alex and Rachel had been hiking through the mountains when they stumbled upon something they weren't expecting. A village, hidden deep in the woods, surrounded by thick mist. The village stood eerily still, its buildings decayed but strangely intact. No one had mentioned this village before, and neither of them had heard any stories about it. Curious, they ventured into the village, their footsteps crunching on the overgrown path. The houses seemed empty, but there was something unsettling about the place, like it was waiting for them. The air was unnaturally cold, and the silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional creak of an old door swinging in the wind. As they wandered deeper into the village, they found no signs of life. No people, no animals, just the abandoned remnants of a once thriving community. But then, they heard it. A soft, mournful cry, coming from one of the houses. Rachel's heart raced as they followed the sound, only to find an old woman sitting by the window, staring out with hollow, unblinking eyes. The woman didn't speak. She simply pointed down the street, towards a large, crumbling church at the end of the village. Reluctantly, Alex and Rachel followed her direction. As they reached the church, the ground beneath their feet seemed to tremble, and the church door creaked open by itself. Inside, they found a room filled with old, tattered candles, their flames flickering despite the absence of wind. And then they saw them, the shadowy figures standing motionless, watching them from the corners of the room. The figures were vaguely human, but their faces were twisted, indistinct, as if they had never been meant to be seen. The shadows whispered to them in a language they didn't understand, a language that made their skin crawl. It was a warning that the village had been forgotten for a reason. The people who had lived there weren't just dead. They were trapped, lost to time, unable to leave, and they hungered for the living. As the figures began to move toward them, Alex and Rachel realized too late that they had crossed into the forgotten village, a place that existed outside of time, and now they were part of its history, doomed to be trapped within its shadows forever. Would they escape before the village claimed them, or would they vanish into the mists, forgotten by the world just like the others? The last story will shock you. Imagine finding a doll, so lifelike, it seems to watch you with its cold, glass eyes. What if the doll had a past, one filled with pain, anger, and death? And what if that doll, and all the others in the dollmaker's cursed collection, had a sinister desire to exact their revenge? Tonight, join Lily and her brother Ryan as they uncover the truth behind the dollmaker's curse, a horrifying legacy of vengeful spirits trapped within porcelain, waiting for their chance to claim the living. Lily and Ryan had always been fascinated by the old stories their grandmother used to tell about a mysterious dollmaker who lived in their town centuries ago. The tales were unsettling, whispers of dolls so lifelike, they seemed to breathe, blink, and follow you with their eyes. But it wasn't just the dolls that frightened the townsfolk. It was the rumors of the dollmaker's dark obsession. He had crafted the dolls from the souls of the lost. One rainy afternoon, the siblings found an old, dusty box in the attic of their grandmother's house. Inside, they discovered a single porcelain doll. Unlike the dolls they had seen in the stories, this one was not beautiful, it was unsettling. Its glass eyes gleamed with an unnatural shine, and its expression seemed to change with every glance. Curious and a little unnerved, Lily examined the doll. As her fingers brushed its delicate, cracked face, a cold chill shot up her spine. She quickly set it down, but a feeling of dread washed over her. It wasn't just a doll, it felt alive. That night, as they slept, strange things began to happen. Lily awoke to the sound of faint whispering. At first, she thought it was the wind, but the voices were too clear, too deliberate. She turned to see the doll sitting on her bedside table, its eyes now wide open, staring directly at her. Her heart pounded in her chest. In the dead of night, Lily and Ryan's grandmother, who had been bedridden for weeks, cried out from the other room. When they rushed to her side, they found her shaking with fear. "It's here," she gasped, her eyes wide with terror. "The curse? It's back." Lily and Ryan didn't understand, but as the hours passed, they began to feel it too. The house had become unnaturally cold, and the shadows seemed to grow longer, stretching and twisting in the corners. The dolls in their grandmother's collection, old, cracked porcelain figures, seemed to watch them, their eyes gleaming in the darkness. Desperate for answers, Lily uncovered an old journal hidden in her grandmother's room. The journal detailed the dollmaker's tragic story. He had once been a kind and talented craftsman, but when his wife and child died in a terrible fire, he descended into madness. In his grief, he turned to dark rituals, attempting to bring them back by trapping their souls in his dolls. But something went wrong. Instead of restoring his family, the ritual unleashed vengeful spirits that possessed his creations. The dolls became vessels for the restless souls, cursed to wander the world, seeking out the living to replace their lost loved ones. Lily's blood ran cold as she read further. The dolls could only be stopped if the dollmaker's curse was broken, and the spirits trapped inside were freed. But to break the curse, they had to destroy the dolls, one by one, before they could claim their souls. That night, as the storm raged outside, Lily and Ryan confronted the dolls. They realized that the porcelain figures were not merely objects. They were vessels for the trapped souls of the dollmaker's family and his victims, all seeking vengeance for the wrongs done to them. The dolls began to move on their own, their eyes following the siblings as they tried to escape. As they fought to destroy the cursed dolls, the workshop door slammed shut, trapping them inside with the spirits of the vengeful dolls. Lily and Ryan realized that to survive, they had to do more than destroy the dolls. They had to free the trapped souls. But the deeper they went into the dollmaker's twisted world, the more the spirits resisted, clawing at their minds, whispering their names in a voice that was no longer human. Would they find a way to break the curse before the dolls claimed them, or would they become part of the dollmaker's collection, forever trapped in porcelain? If you've enjoyed these terrifying tales, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Night Story so you can keep exploring the unknown with us. Every new video brings a fresh nightmare, and I don't want you to miss out on the next chilling chapter. Click the bell icon to stay updated, because you never know what could be hiding just around the corner. Thank you for watching, and remember, if you ever feel the cold touch of something unnatural, don't turn around. Sometimes it's better not to know what's following you. Until next time,